These are the jobs you may not see every day, but just know we're working hard to make Hillsborough County a better place to live, work, and play. Subscribe to our YouTube page for more great county-related videos, only on HTV.
Hey everyone, did you know you could watch today's meeting live and on your smart device? Head on over to the Hillsborough County Meetings channel on the YouTube app. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can be automatically notified when Hillsborough County Meetings goes live. You can also browse any of our past meetings by swiping to the left and scrolling down. All that's left to do is just to click on a video. It's that easy!
Don't let mosquitoes ruin your day. Fight the bite by removing standing water on your property. Standing water of any kind is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Do your part and help reduce the mosquito population. Visit hcfl.gov/fightthebite.
welcome to the May 23rd, 2024 Hillsborough County Tourist Development Council quarterly meeting. This time I'll pass things over to Mr. Barton, who will give us a roll call to establish quorum.
Thank you. Hagan?
Here.
Castor?
Here.
Antonocci? Sorry about that. Antonocci. Yeah, bad morning already. Collier? Gonsmar Williams? Kilton?
Here.
Mackinac? Manthe? Morrison? Placencia? Lou sent me a note. He's not feeling well today. Ross?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
All right. At this time, everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes. We can have a motion to approve minutes from February 8th meeting.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Antonacio, second Mayor Castor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. This time, it's public comment. Would anyone here like to address the board? Seeing none, I'll pass things back over to Ron for the administrative report.
Thank you. And good morning. If you'll turn to your tab for financial section of the report, we'll go over the quarterly reports for both the 3-cent and the 6-cent. So the first one you'll see is the quarterly report for January through March and year-to-date transaction amounts. You can see basically as we drop to the bottom line that at this juncture we're about a little over $1 million favorable on revenues over expenses, and we'll just see how that tracks. And part of the conversation can relate to the revenue collections, which is still fairly steady, just a little under last year, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see here particularly the tourism and marketing, sports commission, out-of-area marketing, they're all pro rata contracts. And the only variables, again, are the Sports Authority complex, which we have encumbered now and made payments to. If you'll turn the page, the next page is the 6-cent quarterly report. Again, you'll see the revenue collections and the budget on the left, and then the quarterly transactions that have occurred. And in this case, we're unfavorable at this juncture in the quarter, but that's because of our, our payments to the city of Tampa on the convention center. So as the revenues collect through the balance of the year, this will right itself in terms of revenues and expenses. If you turn to the next page, you'll see the total. So again, compared to March was, a favorable month, but April again was a little bit negative compared to last year's same month. But again, we're tracking at about 2% negative over last year. So again, no alarms considering what we're comparing to in terms of extraordinary year last year. So this is the dollar amounts that are associated with 1 through 6. If you'll turn the page, these are the dollar amounts that are associated with the 3-cent, 1 through 3. And then if you turn the page, you'll see the dollar amounts associated with the 6-cent and where we are in terms of collections. If you turn to the next page, you'll see the graphs that we've historically shared with you. You can see the pinkish color on the graph is tracking just below last year, but pretty consistent. And so favorable trends nonetheless, even though we're a little bit negative off of last year. And that's the 3-cent. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions, comments on the quarterly financial report? Yeah, Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Ron. I remember last year we had such a banner year that some of this was expected. I remember we had discussion about, at some point this is going to turn. But was there anything in this that anybody's aware of that was not expected? Did we lose a particular segment or a particular convention that was there something that wasn't as expected?
Probably a question for Joanne. I don't really recall anything specific. And again, I think we were at like 2% differential on the month. And
yeah, for the month, probably the biggest impact was the shift of Easter into March, and that week is then quieter from a convention perspective. So that's what we saw the most of. So April should produce, May seem to be strong again.
And we didn't see any cancellations in conventions or conferences like other cities in our state saw because of some of the views of the state. And we had to do a lot of personal meetings with different conventions and conferences to talk about the welcoming nature of the Tampa Bay area, but we haven't seen any lag, any cancellations, and in fact, this year is on par to be the most active for the Tampa Convention Center in history. So it's good. It's going to be a good year.
And to visit Tampa Bay's credit, we filmed a video that was used on many of those conferences. Yep. Any other questions, comments? If not, just have a motion to accept the report.
So move.
Motion, Mr. Morrison.
Second.
Second, Mr. Antonacio. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, I don't see Santiago in the audience, but I do see Jolynn Loki from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Welcome. Good morning.
Welcome. Good morning, all. Chairman Hagan and Mayor Castor, thank you for having me. Mil Caragor, Mil Ross, and the rest of the council appreciate you having me. Jolynn Loki from Visit Tampa Bay. So we'll go ahead and get right into the presentation. Next slide, please. So here you see our quarterly performance, and all your comments were exactly spot on, why we were slightly softer the first quarter. We are anticipating the busiest convention summer ever. And thank you, Mayor, for being on the road with us so much with these conventions and helping support. And again, just to reiterate, we didn't lose one piece of group business. And I think it's through all our relationships and the support of all you in the room. So thank you very much. And we came out, the only other piece missing is other people are starting to market, right? We were the first out of the gate, and we were very strong. So, but you'll see on occupancy, we are still ahead of the U.S. by 20%, and our friends in Florida by 4%. So again, revenue slightly down. Next slide, please. So if you look at us compared to our competitive sets, we're teetering right there with Fort Lauderdale, who had a spring break. So not bad. And then Orlando just behind us. Next slide, please. But then if you look at average daily rate, we start to slip under Fort Lauderdale, Orlando. Next slide, please. And then, of course, hotel RevPAR, again, under Fort Lauderdale and Orlando. We're a little more behind in RevPAR and revenue than we are in occupancy against those in our competitive set as leaders. Next slide, please. And then we look over to Hillsborough County, the hotel taxable revenue. 309 million. Again, we're just slightly less than our banner year last year. However, we're still 19% over the prior year, fiscal year 22. So, and again, we're tracking April slightly better, and then we just got the report in for the last weekly in May. So we're hoping that next slide, please, that bell curve. That curve is going to start to not have quite as much of a dip as the years prior. And you can see we're just slightly less for year to date than we were the year prior. Next slide. And then corresponding collections for the quarter, we were at 18 million, again, slightly under last year, but again, at full 19% over prior year, fiscal year 22. Next slide. And then here we are year-to-date for collections, slightly up, but overall slightly under year-to-date, starting fiscal year September through March. Next slide. So we go to group business, which we talked about. So this is the economic impact for 141 groups that we booked this quarter coming in for future years. And then the groups that actually actualized produced 68 million in economic impact for the community. Next slide. And this is our new North Star video for group business. If we could play the video, hopefully it plays.
It's easy for us to say we have a fantastic convention center, we have a great airport, we have great hotels, great fine dining, but it's better to hear what others say about you as far as what differentiates you from other destinations. It's this constant evolution of what is next here. And when we have conventions, they're always saying, wow, this has really, really changed. We didn't have a JW Marriott 5 years ago. We didn't have Edition 5 years ago. We've added approximately 2,500 hotel rooms, which have been extremely helpful in attracting a different level of clientele, but also adding to that inventory that appeals to meetings, events, conventions. We wanted to be about what an authentic, unique destination this was. Art, culture, history, the people here, the diversity, and obviously food. We had some great restaurants that people knew all about that have been here for decades, if not a century. We're starting to see this proliferation of new restaurants, new chefs, new concepts, a hub of innovation, entrepreneurship, thought leaders, disruptors.
Summit is an annual celebration of innovation all across the state of Florida, and we gather people right here in beautiful downtown Tampa Bay for this extraordinary celebration. Intensive educational sessions, lots and lots of networking. Back in 2018, we hosted the very first CNEP Summit here in Amalie Arena in downtown Tampa, and the community has grown exponentially since then. We've watched the city evolve all around us, Sparkman Wharf to hang out on the amazing waterfront, listen to live music, walking all along the Riverwalk, all the way up to Armature Works with lots of space outside. Just an amazing nightlife here. And all the incredible spaces from the art museums to the dynamic growth of Ybor City as a nonprofit organization that brings business leaders from a diverse array of backgrounds and industries together. We are excited to be a part of creating that growth and dynamic energy that we see everywhere all around Tampa.
We're a live event production company based here in Tampa, Florida. We do events of all kinds of sizes and crazy things. If you're putting together a live event, you want to work with Visit Tampa Bay. They can get you into every venue, introduce you to everybody you need to know, and really make the lift really, really light. As someone who's lived in Tampa most of my life, why would you want to be anywhere else? We have sunshine year-round, great food, great culture, wonderful venues.
Our center is situated right on the heart of our Riverwalk. Our center can host everything from citywide conventions to consumer shows, sporting events, banquets and galas, and general meetings. Our center recently completed a $44 million capital improvement campaign, which featured the addition of 18 brand new waterfront meeting rooms of flex space that can all be opened and connected to our exhibit hall.
The way this destination has grown and evolved, you know, it matches any other destination, not in size, but in quality and in offering. So we like to be that red carpet that welcomes you as a visitor, welcomes you as a meeting, an event, and we often say our visitors become our neighbors. We just sell the place by having you visit, and then you're a believer.
next slide, and that's the perfect segue to the last meeting we were in. The council had requested us giving a report on the $3.2 million that's spread out over 2 years, the campaign to attract business transient and small groups, a little higher end caliber meetings, and have them come in, not only come in, but also stay longer. So far this year, we got half of that and spend 1.5 on media, and then $324,000 on the convention side. So we'll look at next slide at some of our technology and media partners. On the convention side, Adam and his team are really focused on targeting these corporate small businesses. So NHS, MPI, MD, Medical Fam, these are all high-end small meetings. And then out of market, going to and adding some of these shows we've already gone to, but adding some of these shows and the focus and the target to be on smaller high-end businesses, to business meetings to fill in some of those small periods. So next slide is a video on this initiative that they're using out on the road. So on the marketing side of this is the 1.5 million, and that was put in 100% to media. And the campaign just started. We only have 2 months of results, but we've had 16.8 million impressions, which directly generated 1.7 in hotel revenue. And we're anticipating by the end of the fiscal year that this will generate 6.2 million just on the media side and just what we can track directly. So next slide, please. The council also asked us for, I think it might have been the meeting, last meeting or the meeting before, on what Visit Tampa Bay is doing with our destination development plan. So a piece of what we do is destination development and stewardship. And after the pandemic, we shifted the way we did business. We're no longer doing a 5-year strategic plan that takes 6 months to do and then sits there on a shelf and changes every year. So with our marketing, we're able to adapt. We want to fish where the fish are. And we adapt about what's happening externally in our marketing efforts each year. So what we decided to do to fill that space is a destination development plan. Next slide. And we partnered with JLL. JLL on the East Coast, they have worked with several other destinations across the country. And towards the end of the project, we also brought in HCP to help make some of the connections, as he knows the community is local, him and Sean Cliniglio and his team. We also worked and used a lot of hotel data from STR and with Zardico as well, who really does the intelligence and knows and understands where our visitors are going. So we also partnered with the county and the city and all the economic development agencies across the county, wanted to get full buy-in, wanted to see what studies they're doing, so that we had some congruent messaging at the end of this study. Next slide, please. So these are just some top-level, very high results of what came out of the study. Again, if anybody's welcome to have the 100-page study, but top line is expansion of the convention center. We had nearly just what we could track in our system. We lost 250,000 room nights due to size and hotel package. So if we had a 100,000 or 1,000 room headquarter hotel near the convention center that would be within walking distance, that would easily generate 50,000 room nights. And I've been told that is a very conservative, according to Adam's data and his research, we anticipate that that would be even higher. And then the next slide, it just shows the kind of a backup for them talking about convention center expansion and a headquarter hotel. We have 3,340 rooms currently across 10 partners. But you'll see how the walk is to all those partners. And again, they're identifying what we need to fill in those circles. And of course, the red circle in the middle is where we're lacking the most. The next slide, please. This shows that in that small red circle that you saw in the middle on the last slide, we have 30% less hotel rooms than our competitors listed down below. Austin, Nashville, Louisville, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale. So we're down at the bottom when it comes to hotel rooms around the center. Next slide, please. Again, this is more data on the center. We have 46% less exhibit space than those same competitors in our set, as well as 34% less ballroom space. Next slide, please. The next top line is asset development, and this started with JLL talking about tourists. And then Sean's group came in, and it's for both. Zardigo, on an average, these venues and these places are used by 50% venues and 50% locals and 50% from people out of town. So we wanted to survey our residents, and on the next slide, you'll see we did just that. Currently looking at what visitors do in the different quadrants of our county and what they would do with additional amenities and especially transportation. Of course, that's the number one factor on most of the surveys. Next slide, please. So the assets that they recommended, indoor sports complex, multi-use venue, and upgrades at the fairgrounds. And those two would actually take things that we could move from the center and have higher end meetings at the center. And again, they talked about waterfront access, accessing our water. Next slide, Riverwalk activation. We started the Riverwalk Pass about 4 or 5 years ago. That was kind of like a mini city pass where people could pay one price and get into all the little venues across the Riverwalk. And we're starting to see more and more of an increase in that pass. So it would be nice to expand that even further. Of course, the transportation and mobility enhancements and their suggestions, and a new premier event venue. Something that's smaller than Amalie and a little higher end, a little more quaint. And they also, we talked a lot about in our meetings, the synapse and the technology and being a technology hub. It's not in the presentation, but an event that was truly Tampa. And they're talking about innovation, technology, something in the downtown area that would be our own, besides Gasparilla, something else that could be our own. And we're thinking it's a technology. So any questions on the study before we go to the next slide?
I know many of us have seen this before, so that may be the basis for not having more several times. So
yeah, since the ask, I think we started to share it with board and advisory board. So thank you for bearing through it again, Mr. Chairman.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
A lot of let's take the indoor sports complex, and I know Amalie Arena and the Convention Center are used for a lot of different sporting events. But do we include, I know you said downtown area, but do we include like the Skills Center? If you've toured that over off of Hillsborough on 22nd, they have an incredible space, expandable space for indoor sports as well. So can we use those types of amenities to be able to sell to some of these events?
Oh, we could, yeah, if we're able to bring in a group there that's able to convert the space and use it for what they need. But they have identified that we don't have one that's quite big enough.
Right.
So when you have these tournaments and they have several courts, that we don't currently have a space that's big enough. If you have it in the convention center, it takes away from being able to have some higher end meetings there simultaneously. So
I think what we have to do now with say basketball as an example, or baseball or softball, we have to essentially piecemeal it by having multiple venues in order to meet the number of fields or courts that are necessary. Skills Center is an unbelievable facility that could definitely help complement, I think, the existing inventory on something like that, but it's not big enough to be a one-stop place to have the entire tournament. And I know the indoor has been a priority of mine and several others. I know Mr. Morrison and others, and I know we've had a study that was actually dusted off and updated, and when they look at various locations, West Shore, I think over by the tournament complex off of 301, USF area, and that's going to be coming forward here very soon. But hopefully that'll materialize, and I'm excited about it, actually. So.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other questions before we move on to the next slide? And again, I think this was a request maybe of Mr. Manthe. Somebody from the last meeting, we talked a little bit about inflation and the cost of us doing business. So we looked at, and I'll go through these fairly quickly, but advertising has reached 27% increase. So, we're spending $1.27 compared to spending $1 for media in the marketplace. And then that is expected to, it's an election year. So this year, at the tail end of the year, in our fall, that's expected to increase by 30%. From 2020, and then again, as the election starts, 156% for the remainder of this year. Next slide. And of course, we're outselling the destinations. So flights average, we looked at average of what we're spending for the same shows that we're going to. And again, they're going to be on peak times. A lot of people are flying into those markets, but up 58%, hotels 40%. And our booth creative has just been gone up significantly for them to create the booth, ship the booth. We were just at IPW in LA, and thanks to the Newman family, they let us use their booth. So we were able to bring in their entire booth, which saved us significantly. Next slide, please. And then we just picked a show. We picked a show that's a higher end show that we do every year, and looked at just hotel and airfare and what we're spending from in 2019, and then what we spent in 2024 to send one person there. But then we do, 164 of these a year. So you add all that together and look down, like Gasparilla to produce from 19 to 24 cost us 25% more. However, the economic impact of that, we're getting business out of that. That's typically where we're bringing in people that make decisions about big group business. And then our travel writers, the people that come into the market, we have 450 a year. It could be one travel writer, it's a group of travel writers, but it's 40% more to bring them in. Airfare, hotel, and our partners have been amazing. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Jeff. And giving us rooms, but they're harder to give away. when they have high occupancy, when the rates are high. So, we're having to pay a little more to get these people submerged in the market to really showcase our destination. Next slide, please. And this is my little fun area of the business, but these are actual costs of what our business insurance has gone up 51%. Event insurance has gone through the roof. We had a big player move out of the market, unfortunately, right before the last Super Bowl. So getting that insurance in place was a little trickier in Florida. So those rates have increased significantly. Health insurance, as with all of you and your businesses and the city and the county, I'm sure, have gone up as well. Tenancy, parking, 66% up. And to acquire a new hire, we finally built our team back up to where we were in 19. So had to hire people also at a little more money, and plus it costs 14% more to acquire them. So, and then some of our venue and catering costs, 127% up. So hopefully that satisfies the question. And does anybody have any questions on this or anything from the presentation or anything else?
Mr. Morrison.
Jolene, thank you, first of all, for bringing this information forward. I know Mr. Barton has been tired of me wearing out his ear on my sense that we've not funded Visit Tampa Bay as we need to. We've locked in on the conversation of record revenue, record growth, and that's been good conversation and accurate conversation. But we very rarely, if ever, have had this kind of presentation to talk about the cost of doing business. And I think that we've not taken into account, as we look at our funding strategy, the reality of the business that's required. The media buy alone becomes just a great platform to highlight that the assumption that record means good shape isn't necessarily the right assumption or right conclusion. So I thank you again to the team for bringing this information to the table. I think that there's a moment where when we begin talking about budget and revenue allocation from TDC, we need to begin thinking about how we dramatically change how we go about our funding formula for Visit Tampa Bay in particular, because what's highlighted here speaks to the reality of opening the door, keeping it open, and then being able to recruit the business that we're so proud of. It doesn't come by accident, and I think not intentionally, but we've sent the message that there's a magic wand out there that just makes it happen. No. And we've not talked about this reality of opening the door and then keeping it open. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Appreciate that input, which put something in my mind, if you don't mind. We got the results in for 2023, and we had 26.9 million visitors to the county last year, and the total economic impact and the spend was $8.9 billion, and that supports 59,000 jobs, a little closer to 60. But the important part is those tourists bring in $535 million in state and local taxes. So, they're helping us fill up our coffers as well at the state and the county level. So,
Mr. Manthe?
Thank you, anyway, there we go. I would like to echo Bob's comments about reviewing Visit Tampa Bay's funding structure as we move forward, just to make sure they are adequately funded. And I would just like to highlight the notes in the JLL study about, another need for a 1,000-room hotel. I think presently, without a convention center expansion, that's probably a little premature, but history will show if you expand that convention center, the hotel rooms will follow. So hopefully we could give that some serious thought. I know my hometown in New Orleans, every time we expanded the center 250,000 square feet, we generated 3,000 to 5,000 new hotel rooms in the convention market. So that is a proven fact. And in a lot of ways, I think our downtown mirrors that of New Orleans as well, with a river and a convention center on the water. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you. Great presentation, Jolene.
Thank you, Mr. Manthe.
Well stated, Mr. Manthe. Any additional questions or comments for Ms. Loki?
No, and thank you, Ron. Very communicative. We have a great relationship with the county, so appreciate all your help and support as well.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation.
Thank
and if we could, do you have a quick question, Mayor Ross?
It's more of a comment than a question, but I think this is one of the things that comes to my mind every time I see this presentation. It kind of spills over into the transportation component. And for those of you who have heard me at the TPO, you've heard me say this before over and over again, and I'm going to keep saying it, but I think it's crucial that we as a community figure out a way to provide some better transportation options. I know the streetcar extension is terrific, but I really think that we need to figure out how to get downtown and the USF area and the airport connected at a minimum. And I know right now there's no funding for that, and I don't know if there's ever going to be any funding for that, but I think that's going to start with figuring out a way to devise a funding scheme that, I don't know how to, the people in certain parts of the east side of the county are not interested in funding things that affect the urban core. And I think it's key for people that come to visit here to have transportation options to get up to USF or to Moffett and everything that's going on along the Fowler Avenue corridor and to get to the airport. I think at some point that's going to be a limiting factor here. We're going to max out. We're going to continue to draw people down to the convention center and that type of tourism. But to connect these people to the airport and to the north part of the county is crucial. And that's not really a TDC thing, I understand that, but it's a TPO thing. And so these things touch each other, and I think it's critical that on the TPO, we continue to try to figure out ways to make something happen here. And I don't think it's just rapid bus lanes. I think it's got to be more than that. And whether that's a streetcar thing or whether that's a light rail that goes along 275 and connects to the airport in USF, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but that needs to happen. That should have happened 30 years ago and it didn't, but it needs to happen. And I know nobody wants to pay for that, but there's going to reach a point where this is going to be, that's going to limit us, not only for tourism, but for workers and new companies coming here. Transportation is going to become a really big limiting factor. So that's just my little rant, sorry.
Right, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. That is, we talk about just in our city, we need 26,000 affordable units today, and that is a critical need. But transportation, if you talk about the growth of our city, transportation is our Achilles heel. And it's not for a lack of ideas and planning, it's the lack of funding. And so we've gone through a number, and I visit other cities, Kansas City, for example, and that is a county metropolitan combination, but they pass the sales tax. They have just about that entire city covered with streetcars or some type of a system that will come from the airport down to the transportation hub right there on I-275 and then into downtown. And whether that goes along the interstate or it goes to Cypress, but that would be a bit limiting in that it would connect downtown with the airport in the West Shore area, but then to connect out to West Shore as well. So those ideas are there. Transportation, we know how long those projects take, and we know how much they cost. And that in the development arena, transportation always lags behind, and those projects take the longest. So I echo what you have to say, and we have other ideas on how we would be able to fund that, because I don't think we can wait. I don't believe that we can wait on another All for Transportation type of an initiative, that we need to get these projects moving right now. Also agree with Troy about the convention center. And we've had many discussions about that. A hotel that would attach to the convention center with expanded exhibition. That's the biggest issue at our convention center right now, is the available exhibition space. And we were fortunate to be able to get David Ingram as our director of the convention center from the Orange County Convention Center, and he is doing an amazing job. But we do have to make sure that we have our eye on the ball with the expansion of that convention center as well, because it will affect the rest of the growth in our community exponentially.
Excellent points. If no other comments, can we have a motion to accept the report?
Move to accept.
Motion, Mayor Ross. Second, Mr. Manthe. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, likewise. All right, motion carries unanimously. Any other discussion items? Mr. Martin or Mr. Morrison?
One other point, and going back to the report, I would love to, if the council felt so inclined, to ask Visit Tampa Bay to come back with us with I want to call it a case study, but I'd love for them to come back to us to give us what would a budget look like if they could do what they, as subject matter experts, believe we need to do. If we're doing advertising in the Northeast for 6 months out of the year, and we know we'd love that we'd be better stated if we had a footprint year-round, what would that cost? If there was, if we were looking at the Midwest and our destinations, where our feeder cities, what would our presence, what would our optimum presence look like? Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about changing our formula of funding, we need to have some benchmark to work against as to how close or how far we are to reaching that benchmark. So I'll just put that out there as a suggestion. Maybe Ron can meet with the Visit Tampa Bay staff to begin to see what that might look like. So then, as opposed to talking in the abstract, we then begin talking about real objectives versus the reality of where we are today. So just a thought for further consideration for us.
All right, thank you. Ron, any comments on that or any other items?
Actually, I just wanted to inform you,
Mic on.
Wanted to inform you that I've had conversations with the staff at the fairgrounds, and I've invited them to come present to the TDC in August. I think it's interesting that it's noted in the analysis that Visit Tampa Bay did, and certainly they have a significant number of venues that impact our community as well. So I've invited them to come present, just as we've had other entities in recent meetings, and better familiarize yourself with their functions and their operations, and frankly, their discussions about expansion. So that's coming for the August meeting.
I think it'd be well received.
Yep.
Any other discussion items? If not, we're adjourned.